The House will come to order. Maybe. Which is the next bill for our consideration, House Bill 157. The reading clerk read the bill.
House Bill 157, sponsored by Representative Baer, proof of voter citizenship. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 157, proof of voter citizenship, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Brown, Heft, Johnson, Knapp, Locke, Lucas, Webb, Weber, Yin. Representative Knapp, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure, Chairman Knapp?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Bill number HB 157, proof of voter citizenship, do pass. And with that, I will turn the explanation of the bill to the sponsor.
Chairman Baer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So hopefully everybody can remember the conversation we just had, because this would, a lot of the discussion would be very similar in this one here, so we can quickly dispatch this particular bill. This is House Bill 157, and just so you all understand, there's a national effort to do the same thing that is being brought by our newly elected executive, number 47 for the United States, and as well as number 45, and it's called the SAVE Act. And you probably, many of you have signed on to support that act. This is a very similar measure to that. In fact, in that honor, I actually grew this mustache so I could look like the sponsor of that bill. No, his mustache looks much better than mine, but I'm trying. With that having been said, that good honorable representative from the great state of, well, I won't say the name of it, but the southern one with the longhorn symbol, did bring a great opportunity for us to tighten up our election law in regards to citizenship, which was brought up earlier by some of the questions in the previous bill on residency. You know, citizenship is a little bit different. It's very much controlled by federal law in comparison. So this bill really would align us with that federal law that is being debated and being sponsored basically by the executive that's coming into office now. So with that, I'll explain the bill. What this bill does is it requires proof of citizenship. And you can see on page 1 exactly which parts of the green books we affect. In definitions here, we add the word citizenship in the middle of page 2. We also add a lot of language here at the bottom of page 2 that talks about the proof of United States citizenship, what that means, and then we give into the list of documents that we would use for that. I will read through the list now and give a little bit of description on some of these. First of all is a valid Wyoming driver's license. And there's a caveat here at the bottom of it. It's provided that the license or identification card does not contain any indication that the person is not a United States citizen. And on our current driver's licenses, and there's been some efforts in this body to change this to make it a little more explicit, but on our current licenses, we get an NR down in the bottom right-hand corner of that document. NR stands for non-resident. So that would be the particular indication that the clerk would need to look further. The next, we have the tribal identification card, which does include a photograph. We have a valid driver's license or identification card issued by another state that is consistent with the requirements of the Real ID Act, which we use here, defined by this particular Wyoming statute 3770102, and that also indicates that the applicant is a citizen of the United States. Now, that NR that we have in the state of Wyoming, that is not a standardized thing across the nation with Real ID. So there's a little bit of an issue here, and I will be bringing a second reading amendment to address that issue. So there's a little bit of a caveat there. We'd like to clean that part up in Section C. I will bring an amendment in the second reading to address that. We also have a valid United States passport, certificate of United States citizenship, naturalization, a certificate of naturalization, a military draft record, consular report of birth abroad, as well as an original certificate, copy, a birth certificate. Then in qualifications for temporary registration, we again add, as evidenced by providing proof of United States citizenship. Moving to page 5, again, proof of United States citizenship is added to the statute. And then in the attestation portion of it, on the postcard, we put proof of United States citizenship and proof of identity. Again, we add proof of United States citizenship in 223-118. And with that, I'll ask for your favorable consideration and stand for questions.
Chairman Knapp, could you please move the standing committee amendment? That was Ocean Andrews' fault? Okay. There is a committee of the whole amendment. Representative Yen? Sorry, Chairman Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, I move Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 157 and ask for your favorable consideration, members. This was posted before lunch, so hopefully you guys had a chance to look at it. But if you have not, essentially all this amendment does is make sure that this applies to every voter who is already registered. So you register, you have to provide proof of citizenship. If you've already registered, how do we know that the people who are already registered are citizens? For most of those people, clerks know if they've registered with a tribal ID or a driver's license, so they should be generally covered. But I think if what's good for the gander, people who haven't registered, is good for the goose, people who have registered. And with that, that's my amendment.
Chairman Knapp.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, I would call a Rules Committee on the point of germaneness with this particular amendment.
Rules Committee to the front, please. As the chair of the committee of the whole, I rule that this is not germane to the bill.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Yen.
I move to overrule the ruling of the chair. So yes, I disagree with your ruling, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor of Representative Yen's to overrule the chair, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
So, Mr. Chairman, point of order, it's a debatable motion, if I remember correctly. So we can have debate on this motion. But only on it has to be germane to the motion, right? So I have to argue why your ruling is incorrect. It can't be about the merits of the amendment. It has to be about whether you ruled that it's not germane, so it has to be pertain specifically to the germaneness of the amendment.
Representative Yen.
So, Mr. Chairman, the reason I moved to overrule the ruling of the chair is because the amendment is clearly germane. We are talking about voter registration, and this amendment deals with registered voters. It's logical that if you have a voter registration requirement and you create a new requirement, that everyone that is currently registered, you would want them to obey that requirement. Clearly, that is germane. This is just making sure that the new registration requirement applies not only to unregistered voters, but also to registered voters.
Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would respectfully disagree with my colleague from the northeast corner. I'm sorry, I'm from the northeast. He's from the northwest corner of the state. The bill is clearly about registration, the act of registering. So this particular amendment applies to people who are not registering, but who are sitting at home and thinking that they are registered, ready to vote for the next election. And I do agree with the sentiment of the bringer that this is a great thing to do. It's just not particularly accurate to be in this particular bill. It's not the right place for it in this particular bill, which is dealing with registration. So the germaneness is this amendment dealing with registration? Well, no, these people are already registered. So there's the crux of the matter. We're trying to pull in people who are not registering and make this apply to them. Now, it will apply to them at a later date. So if this bill would apply to them if they were to go register. So that again shows that they are not registering. So this bill wouldn't apply to them, and therefore the amendment is not germane. Thank you.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have I guess can't use props. In your Mason's manual, there is a section on what is germane. So section 402, amendments must be germane, and it says, to be germane, the amendment is required only to relate to the same subject. I think you're really tying your hands if we're only going to say that registration is meant to only be about the specific new registrants and not people that are already registered. Does that mean that any bill where we refer to previous registrants and upcoming ones is not following single subject? So if we were talking about something else entirely, like maybe whether you get a license to hunt or not in that registration, that would be completely different. But this is registration, regardless of whether it's current or not. And so the germaneness, I think, is obvious. And again, to repeat, under our rules, to be germane, the amendment is required only to relate to the same subject. We're talking about voter registration in the bill and in the amendment. Thank you.
Representative Chested.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I hear debates about germaneness, the first thing I want to do is look at the title of the bill, and the title of the bill kind of constrains what is germane to the topic. And I beg to disagree with the bringer of the bill. I don't see anything in the title of the bill that limits it to forward-looking registration. It could also apply to existing registration. That depends, excuse me, on how broadly or narrowly you read the word register to vote. Register to vote could be current registrations, it could be future registrations. And I personally would prefer to have a broad interpretation of that because we want, if there's something that's relevant to the registration, to existing registrations, which I think this amendment is, I would like to include as much as possible. So I would read the word in the title of the bill on line 2, register to vote, as being registered to vote is equally inclusive as future registrations. Thank you.
Representative Yen.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a point of order, because we are still in committee of the whole. I'm curious on whether you would like us to do first and second time speaking only, or it's committee of the whole so we can speak as much as we want. I'm hearing from some of the clerks that we speak as much as we want. So with that, you know, it's up, again, you're the chairman.
We're in committee of the whole. I believe debate is unlimited.
Great. So, Mr. Chairman and members, I apologize. You know, this is, we're going deep in procedure on day one of committee of the whole. And so not all of you have Mason's manuals in front of you. You probably wouldn't unless you have historically been in the body and have heard us call rules committee over the years. So if it's section 402 in Mason's, we're talking about germaneness to amendments. We're talking about what amendments that we can bring in front of this body. Historically, it has been the practice of the body and the chairman to decide whether a rule is germane rather than an amendment is germane, rather than us voting up or down the amendment. And so when we're talking about germaneness, we really want it to be, you know, does this make sense within the bill itself? Or is this such a different topic that it doesn't make sense in this bill? And so different bodies have kind of ruled on that different ways. Some have ruled very tightly. Some have ruled more expansively. So a Title 22 bill that deals with voting could deal with any voting amendment within that bill. Or are we only talking about, as the good representative from the Northeast said, are we only talking about very new registrants? So that's up to you and your personal preference on how you believe the future of this body looks like when you're voting on germaneness on amendments. If you want to do it very narrowly, then we can rule that way in future amendments, but I do ask you to be consistent. I think that it's very logical that this makes sense within this bill. We are talking about voter registration requirements, we're talking about proof of citizenship, and we're saying that that should apply to people that have not registered and need to register, or people who still need to vote. You got to make sure that they fulfill these requirements as well, even if they are already registered. So again, vote how you will, and I'm sorry that this is happening on the very first day, but it does set the tone of what amendments we will start challenging or not challenging in the future.
Oh, question haven't been called. Oh, wait. Chairman Knapp, are you sure? Oh, all right, question haven't been called. And just to let everybody know that a yes vote or an aye vote on this would be the overruling the chair. A no vote would be maintaining the rule of the chair. So all those in favor of Representative Yen's motion to overrule the chair, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The noes have it. Ruling of the chair maintains. What? Division's been called? All those in favor, please stand. All those opposed, please stand. A lot more. More than 15. The noes have it. Do I really need to? The ruling of the chair is maintained. Now we're back on. Representative Yen, can you please withdraw your amendment?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I respectfully withdraw my amendment.
Thank you. Amendment's withdrawn. I believe we're back on the bill. Representative or Chairman Bear.
Thank you. Just one more bite at the apple here. I appreciate that debate, and I do hope we get a bill in the future to address that different issue. But again, this bill is just, I'm really excited to see the state of Wyoming move forward in this direction. I think your constituents are going to be excited, so I respectfully request an aye vote on this, this particular bill in this committee of the whole.
All right, question being called. All those, oh, sorry. Question being called, all those in favor of Chairman Knapp's motion that House Bill 157 pass the committee of the whole, or when the committee of the whole rises to report the recommendation that House Bill 157 do pass, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. House Bill 157 has passed committee of the whole. The reading clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 32, sponsored by Representative Lean. What is a Woman Act? Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom's referred House Bill 32. What is a Woman Act? Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Klauston, Gugemas, Heft, McCann, Ottman, Rodriguez-Williams, Wasserberger. Noes, Representative Yen. Excused, Representative Stivar. Representative Rodriguez-Williams, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill? Oh, yep. We have standing, you need to move standing committee amendments, right? Representative Rodriguez-Williams. Chairman Rodriguez-Williams, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it does so with the recommendation that House Bill number 32 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the standing committee amendment.
You have heard the motion on the standing committee amendment. Oh, wait a minute, hold up. This thing is all over the place. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative. I would rather talk about the standing committee amendment. Oh, okay. Madam Chairman, whatever your pleasure is.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn the explanation of the bill and the standing committee amendment over to the sponsor of the bill from House Bill 38, or from House District 38.
Representative Lean, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As an explanation of the amendment, there is a legal standing to, so I hope you've all had a chance to read the amendment. If you follow along, we're going to change the definition of female and male to match the legislation that is proposed under House Bill 72. This has a larger legal standing so that if a case comes before a court, you have the ability to make a stand that will stick. So that's the change of the First Amendment. As the speaker was saying, there's a divisibility, and I can move to the second one when he's ready. But it should be divided.
Okay, question being on, oh, Representative Lawley. Sorry, Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to chime in, and I appreciate the bringer of this bill and the bringer of this amendment for seeking to align some definitions and some bills that are coming. So not only House Bill 72, but House Bill 60. And what we've done is to align the definitions and with language that is more legally defensible. So again, I speak on and for this standing committee amendment and thank the bringer of it.
Question being called on the standing committee amendment to House Bill 32. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Standing committee amendment to House Bill 32 has passed or has been adopted. Back on the bill. Representative Yen.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So what I asked the sponsor during the committee meeting is what I will ask any member if they know. What does the bill do? What does the bill do? We have a bunch of definitions, and we say that it applies to basically every statute of law and every agency rule and regulation. Can anyone tell me what laws that they would apply to so I can go home and tell my constituents how they're actually affected by this bill? Because frankly, I truly don't know how my constituents are affected by this bill. I know ideologically how they could be affected, but we're talking about how it applies to the statutes, the Green Books of Wyoming. I want to know so I can tell my constituents at home what this actually applies to. Thank you.
Representative Lin. Representative Lin, can you present the bill now, please?
Thank you for that. Sorry, so we were on the amendment and now we're on the bill. So just to speak about House Bill 32, what this does is codify into law the definition of male and female. This legislation offers the branch that oversees our judges the opportunity to have a definition in the event that they have legislation that comes or litigation that comes before them and they need a definition to define male and female. Article 6, Section 1 of our Wyoming Constitution says that male and female citizens are to enjoy equal rights. The last line of Section 6 says, both male and female citizens of this state shall equally enjoy all civil, political, and religious rights and privileges. We have a constitutional duty to define male and female today. This legislation enshrines exceptions and protections for individuals born with medical recognized disorders or differences in sex, development as afforded under the Americans with Disability Act and other applicable Wyoming laws. By defining male and female, and in doing so, requiring bathrooms, locker rooms, private spaces to be utilized according to sex as found on individuals' birth certificates, this arrangement exists within a generations-old framework of recognized a distinction between the sexes for permissible and important purpose of protecting privacy and safety, and results in similar treatment of all individuals similarly situated. This protects all of our social classes. It doesn't give one a guise over another to enter a safe space or a private space. There's a Supreme Court decision, and it also is critical to recognize the fact that it doesn't define sex to include gender identity. This could potentially save the state's money from any litigation from a male or a female that wants to go to the opposite prison, or in the event of a young man, young woman, to the state schools if assigned there. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I ask that we move forward House Bill 32 out of committee of a whole so that we have an obligation to define male and female for our branch that oversees our judges, that constitutionally we need to define this because it is mentioned in over 200 laws, and that this legislation allows for equal protection of all persons within the state of Wyoming. And to answer Representative Yin, I have a couple of laws that I did find for you. Article 1, Title 21-25-102 mentions male and female. Article 2, Title 29, 201 mentions male or female, and Article 5, 1-12-501 are just a few of the laws that would be implemented with male and female. I urge a yes vote or an aye vote to get this out of committee of a whole today.
Members, just let's try to refrain from using their names. Representative Cheston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleague from the county with the high mountains asked a good question. What does this bill actually do? And I have an answer for that question. What this bill does or attempts to do is to do the court's job. There is on page 3, starting in section B, the legislature finds that these laws are subject to intermediate constitutional scrutiny. That's what's going on here. They're trying to tell the court what the Constitution requires. That is not the job of this legislature. The level of scrutiny, whether it's intermediate scrutiny, strict scrutiny, rational basis, those are constitutional law concepts, and they are based on the court's interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. That is the job of the court. And when we tell the court how to do its job, we are in trouble. We are violating the principle of separation of powers. And I therefore strongly urge this body to reject this bill and vote no. Thank you.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to the last speaker, the court's job is to adjudicate the laws that we write. Words mean things. We need to be very clear on exactly what we mean when we write a law, and when there is a cloud of confusion being strewn up about what a word means, it is appropriate for us to stand forward and clearly define precisely what we mean. Thank you.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the good sponsor of the bill and to the last speaker. I'm left in a little bit of confusion because I guess first I'd say I think defining what a woman is and a man is has value. And I think that we're in a time in our society that you know, I didn't think we'd see that we somehow have to define that and get it in place. But I agree with the good law professor that this goes beyond that. But in the response from the last individual, so I heard the sponsor say what we're doing is defining what a woman is. But indeed, we do more than just define what a woman is. So is the intent of the bill purely to put a definition on what a male and a female is? Or is it also to tell the courts what we think meets constitutional intermediate scrutiny? So if you could clarify that up for me, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our good friend asked about what does this bill do, so I'd like to provide a very simple explanation. So when you get a certificate of live birth, it doesn't say who's parent 1, who's parent 2. It asks who's the father, who's the mother, and it's as simple as that. That's just a small example of how far this argument has gotten when we have to debate basic biology and generations and generations and generations of history. Thank you.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question for the bringer of the bill. In paragraph D on page 4, does this empower the government to keep some sort of registry as to which citizens have undergone some sort of transitional surgery that is not recognizing the fundamental differences between male and female, but have undergone a cosmetic surgery to reflect how they choose to express themselves.
Representative Jarvis?
Mr. Chair, as a female and also as someone who spends most of my life in the practitioner world, my lens when I look at a lot of these bills are the enactment of them. And when you look at the definition, the revised definition of What is a Woman Act, I question, it talks about our reproductive system, and it also talks about the eggs for fertilization. Is the definition correct? Am I looking at the wrong one, or am I in the right one? Okay, who's going inside my body to prove this? That is extremely invasive and very concerning. Who's going inside my daughter's body to prove this? Like, how are you going to ask women to prove this?
Representative Bratton? Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many times do we define words and phrases in statute? It is very important to make sure that we do define this in statute, and it's man, woman, boy, girl is over 200 times in our statutes. So we need to define this. Thank you.
Chairman Rodriguez-Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For now is a time such as this. It is time to stand up for real women. Thank you to the bringer of this bill. As a real woman and a legislator, I know that legislators define terms. And I recall not too long ago where there was a confirmation hearing in the highest court of this land, and the nominee couldn't define what a woman is. The courts need a little help. Not too long ago, there was a situation in our great state where the judicial branch dismissed a lawsuit that was filed by sorority sisters from our land-grant university here in this great state. It's time to stand up for real women. I'm an aye, and I urge an aye on this bill.
Representative Angelos?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of this bill as a female, as a woman. I think you can address one of the last commenters of who's going to invade somebody's body. And I just want to say it is an honor system. But coming from a community that has had a woman have a male in a locker room, and our communities are asking for definitions because it says male or female or man or woman on that bathroom plaque, we need to be able to say, if you choose to go in as an opposite sex, that this defines who you are. We need to protect women. And I'm hearing this from my mothers who have daughters in locker rooms, and there has to be the definitions there. To another speaker that came up, we write the law as legislators. Go look at this is basic civics. We write the law. Sometimes we have to define it. The courts have actually pushed back cases, and we have one right now in the court saying, define this better. What did the legislature mean by this? We're trying to get ahead of that. And this helps keep us out of court with language that can stand. Thank you very much.
Representative Wiley?
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree. Males need to be males. Females need to be females. But I also am listening to the debate right now, and which is good, right? We're in this room to debate. I also hear the concerns of some folks, making lists of people, discrimination, or how are you going to actually tell? It just comes to my mind, why don't we use what we've been using to define a male or a female for, decades now? And that's a birth certificate. Legal document, you get it at birth, male, female. Could simplify, it would make it easy. Thank you.
Representative Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this, and hopefully you guys can all tell that I'm not a woman. But I really, this is so troubling to me. When I was going around campaigning this year, this was the #1 issue with everybody I talked to. They were shocked that this state couldn't tell the difference between a man and a woman. And I can tell you, I do think we have a duty and obligation. I have a daughter. My mother's passed. I've got sisters, I've got aunts. I've even got an ex-wife. But I can tell you, I don't want any of them to be faced with a situation where they're in a private setting and they're exposed to something that they are not expecting to be there. And there's so much confusion on something. To me, we were all little kids, we knew the difference. But now that we got to be adults, we can't tell the difference. And I disagree. I do think the courts have cried out and said, we don't have a nail to hang our hat on. We need something. I think this is the state of Wyoming putting a nail in the wall saying, this is what we refer to when we talk about a man and a woman, this is it. So that our courts can hang their hat on that. They're not out there flopping in the breeze because they don't have anything other than that. So I would encourage the body to vote for this. I think it's long overdue. It's sad to me that we spent as much time dealing with this topic. And I know there are people that, I have a niece that's now a nephew, but I can tell you, I still see her as a niece, even though she can grow a beard as well as I can. But I can tell you, I love her just like anybody else, but I want to protect her too. And I don't think protecting her is by allowing people to continue to go into things. They really, if you think you're a man, that's one thing. If you got all the body parts to be a man, I really don't think you have any business being in a private setting. That's my opinion. I would encourage your support. Thank you.
Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to answer the good representative's question about birth certificates. Other states allow people to go back and amend the birth certificates to the opposite sex now.
Representative Brady.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to mention that same comment. I'm in full support of this bill. And there's a famous sports person who happened to change his birth certificate to a female. So that's my concern too, as long as we're covered there. And can they backdate it? I have no idea what the birth certificate says, but as long as that's covered.
Representative Jarvis.
Mr. Chair, I think I have no problem with what it means to be female or what it means to be male or to provide protections for human beings. I guess I'm listening to everybody, and I listened to the fact that other states allow birth certificates because that sounded like a phenomenal idea. And then I just question, so what happens to my representative with under the current definition, because that's really where my problem lies, is how we're defining that and what it actually opens up to allow to happen to a human being's body in order to prove male or female. And brought up a great point. There are some men that look very feminine and there are some females that look very male. And so those people that God made them the way that they made them, and they don't necessarily look like who they are, what identification are they going to have and what are they going to have to go through to prove that as well? Like, it's my issue with this bill is in the definition on the how do we actually define what is a woman. And I have a fundamental issue when the definition has to do with our internal body.
Representative Provenza?
Thank you. It's easy to miss this spot, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at page 4, section C, talking about domestic violence shelters. And I can't, without an enforcement mechanism, you open up everything to being the enforcement mechanism. And then the courts will decide whether it's legitimate or not. And on line 11, when we talk about domestic violence shelters, are you going to force potentially rape victims to show their genitals to enter a domestic violence shelter? Potentially when their husbands were the ones that raped them, and maybe their husbands want to make it more difficult for them to be in that domestic violence shelter. If you do not have enforcement mechanisms, if you do not outline exactly how this is going to be enforced, you are opening it up to everybody. And I don't want rape victims to show up to domestic violence shelters and have to show their genitals. I don't think I need to walk you through why that's so traumatic. You want to do this? Fine. Let's outline exactly what that looks like, because I think right now the Constitution would say this bill is too vague. How the court's going to make a decision about something that has no enforcement mechanism? What does this mean for the 200+ statutes that refer to men and women? What's it mean for rape victims showing up to domestic violence shelters?
Representative Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of challenges I have initially. It's being repeated over and over again that we are just establishing definitions. And page 1, lines 1 through 8, the first item of business is specifying definitions and standards. The second is providing for the law to distinguish between accommodations. And then we have the collection of vital statistics and other data to identify and providing an effective date. So it's not just providing for definitions. There are other calls to action. And that is, I think, what terrifies me the most is we talk about government overreach and we talk about protecting the rights and freedoms and liberties of individuals. And this bill, to me, screams we are taking rights, liberties, freedoms from individuals and giving that authority to the state. So our school districts can no longer make that decision. Our private businesses can no longer make that decision. Our cities, our counties can no longer make the decision. How do we best accommodate the residents in our community? That is now an authority given to the state. So the state gets to decide for every city, every county, every business, every restaurant, this is the mandate, how you will handle this. And in Casper, it's pretty easy. I mean, we have here's one stall. Doesn't matter what you are, go in and do your thing. They've already figured it out. And so if the intent is to provide definitions, then stop there. If the intent is to mandate and take away choices from our cities, our counties, our school districts, our businesses, and give that authority to the state, that terrifies me.
Representative Cheswick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along those same lines, I want to call the body's attention to section D of this bill, starting at the bottom of page 4. Any school district or public school thereof, other state agencies, line 23, shall identify, when you're reporting demographic data as male or female, any kind of report you're making, there's a duty on all those reporting agencies to, quote, shall identify, that's mandatory, shall identify each person who is part of the collected data set as either male or female, consistent with the person's sex at birth. How are school districts and other public agencies going to determine what anybody's sex at birth was? What kind of intrusive questions or examinations are you going to have to do to gather that data that you are now required? You shall do that. This is not just a definitions bill. This is actually mandating intrusive investigations, and I therefore again urge a no vote on this bill.
Representative Lynn? Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to answer a few of the questions, forgive me if I don't identify you each individually. As you move through the bill, as you do get to Section D, most of this is already collected. When you have to register a child for school, you have to present their birth certificate. 1, to show who the legal parents are, and 2, to identify if they're a male or a female. This data is already being collected. This isn't any additional government overreach. If you're going to show up at a domestic violence center and you are clearly in trauma, I doubt that anybody is going to turn you away, and they're going to get you medical treatment. During that medical treatment, they will know whether you are a man or a woman and how this incident occurred. It will show up in the police report. I offer for you doorstep conversations. In my district, while I was campaigning, this was option number 2. Very first was property taxes. Second, we need the state to tell us, man and woman, protect women's rights. Here I am. From the additional representative that is also from the same community as I want you to know that generationally, society has been able to use proper bathrooms by signs. We now invite them and remind them that proper birth certificates already have laws in place on how to change them post-transition. Wyoming's already covered that. Those rules have been promulgated. What we need to do now is identify that in state-run buildings, male and female have separate bathrooms. For those individuals who do not wish to use a male or a female restroom, there are ADA bathrooms and handicapped family facilities. You are welcome to use those. That will ensure your privacy and your protection as a minority individual as well. I yield my time to the floor.
Representative Campbell, do you have any? You're at the podium.
A final thought as I was walking that way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the black and white definition served us well decades, hundreds of years ago, right, when most of these statutes first came on. We now have a better understanding of the complexity that is the human. And it's not just biology. We have chromosomal factors, we have hormonal factors, so it's not as clear black and white anymore. And so I think our challenge is how do we allow that flexibility? Because we have seen it's not just a biological issue anymore. It is far more complex than that. You can have an individual who biologically has the reproductive parts of a female. Chromosomally is male. Hormonally is male. And so now we're going to tell this male person that because you have the reproductive parts of a female, you are mandated by the state to use a female restroom. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. There's far more complexity that goes into this. So I think for us to say we're drawing a hard line, black and white, is going to target so many individuals that we now have a better understanding of why this isn't as easy or as simple as it seems.
Question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Rodriguez-Williams' motion that the Committee of the Whole rises to do so with the recommendation that Bill number 32 do pass. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. House Bill division before I even rule, huh? Okay. House Bill 32 has passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 1. Division's been called. All those in favor, please stand. Is it okay to just say more than half? Stand still, please. Please stand still. All those opposed, please stand. Less than 50. House Bill. Yep. House Bill 32 has passed committee of the whole. Representative Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor, please.
Absolutely.
I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Carl Allred over here in this gallery to my right. Mr. Allred has been active in politics for many, many years and served as our Secretary of State back in 2022 after the resignation of Ed Buchanan. And so just wanted to acknowledge that he's here and give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Chairman Rodriguez-Williams. Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor.
absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please join me in welcoming representatives of Wyoming's 21 credit unions. These members, excuse me, let me, this here. These member-owned financial cooperatives serve over 330,000 Wyoming credit union members and provide service at 69 Wyoming branches. They employ 900 Wyoming citizens, and they contribute $178 million to Wyoming's economy. Representatives from our Wyoming community credit unions join us today from Trona Valley, Atlantic City, Sunlight, Pathfinder, Uniwyo, Stage Point, Blue, First Education, Meridian Trust, Waihi, and Black Hills Federal Credit Unions. Join me in welcoming them.
Thank you. Any
Mr.
other
Speaker?
privileges? Yes. Go ahead, Pepper.
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
Absolutely, Representative Ottman.
Thank you. I would like to just bring everybody's attention. We have a visitor here, Representative Jeanette Ward.
Welcome back. Any other privileges? Okay, thank you. Our next bill for our consideration is House Bill 147. The reading clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 147, sponsored by Representative Rodriguez-Williams, prohibition of institutional discrimination. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 147, prohibition of institutional discrimination, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Andrew, Bratton, Erickson, Gugamas, Kelly, Lawley, Singh, Strzok, Williams. Representative Andrew, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Ocean? Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew.
Right here, Chairman Andrew. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 147 do pass, and I further move the adoption of the Standing Committee Amendment. So members, with the Standing Committee Amendment, we make a few simple changes. The first one being that on page 5, line 1, there was originally a line that says, "No government entity shall engage in or require instruction in institutional discrimination." We made a change. We divided that up and clarified it a little bit so that there are 2 Romanettes, one that says, no government entity shall engage in institutional discrimination or require instruction promoting institutional discrimination. The second part of this amendment adds some language in this bill that says nothing in this section shall prohibit discussion during instruction. And Mr. Chairman, I would actually like to divide this amendment at this time.
How would you like that divided?
The division number 1 is lines 1 through 10. This is the first part of this amendment that adds clarification to the section about requiring instruction or engaging in institutional discrimination. And I would ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
The chair rules that is, the division is lines 1 through 10 on the amendment, the Standing Committee Amendment, and then also
That's it, lines 1 through 10.
yeah, it's lines 1 through 10 is Division 1, right? And then
And
11 through
and
15
that's
be
right.
Division
And
2?
division number 2 is lines 12 through 15.
I find that that's divisible. So it would be on Division 1, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Division 1, which I already explained, but for proper procedure, I'll explain it again. This is the part of the amendment that modifies the language on page 5, line 1, to prohibit government entities from requiring instruction, promoting institutional discrimination, and engaging in the same. Question?
Question? I guess question being called. You've all heard the motion that for standing committee, oh, wait a minute. Division of the Standing Committee Amendment. On Division 1, which would be lines 1 through 10, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That Division 1 of the Standing Committee Amendment from lines 1 through 10 is adopted. Back on to Division 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Division 2 was something that our committee had thought of with protecting the free speech of students in mind. But we've since decided that since this bill does not regulate students at all, it regulates the actions of governmental entities, that this line might actually end up confusing the bill and not serving, or making the bill more confusing and not serving a purpose. So I'd ask for a no vote. Question on the division?
Any discussion on Division 2? Seeing none, question being called. All those in favor of Division 2 of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to House Bill 147, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
I'm in doubt. All those if your eyes stand up, I guess. All those in favor, please stand up. You guys are very quiet on that one.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
What is your, Representative Pendergraft?
There appears to be some confusion. Could you just please clarify the vote? Aye means this, no means this. Thank you.
This, I is on Division 2, I would be to keep lines 12 through 15. A no vote would be to eliminate lines 12 through 15. And I do believe the chair had a recommendation on that, but he'll speak about it again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My recommendation was a no vote.
So, with that, any more discussion? All right, so there's no more discussion on Division 2 of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
No.
Division 2 is not adopted. Back on the bill, Chairman Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I would like to turn over explanation of the bill to the bill's sponsor.
Chairwoman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you House Bill 147, titled Prohibition of Institutional Discrimination, and ask for your favorable consideration. Essentially, what this bill does is it makes it illegal to discriminate in conformance with the United States and Wyoming constitutions. So this bill takes unnecessary acts to divisive activity by banning discrimination against any Wyomingite on the basis of race, color, ethnicity, religion, biological sex, or national origin. The current administration sold DEI as a benign way to address inequalities, but the words for which these letters stand have been twisted really beyond all recognition, and now they mean something the exact opposite of what most Americans and Wyomingites believe are meant by the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. The acronym I will continue to use the acronym DEI throughout my explanation. I don't believe that Wyoming government should take any action that treats individual Americans differently or segregates them because of immutable characteristics such as race, sex, or national origin. Essentially, what this bill does is it restores our state government to the colorblind approach that the Constitution originally intended, and that morality dictates, and that our national unity requires. And Mr. Chairman, Section 1 in this bill creates a new chapter in Title IX that prohibits practices of state institutions. There are definitions in this bill that are very plainly written. I appreciate the floor's vote on the amendment, standing committee amendment, and I yield to any questions of the body on this bill, and I urge an aye vote.
Question being called? Question being called? All those in favor of Chairman Andrews' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, does so with the recommendation that bill number 147 do pass, all say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. House Bill 147 has passed committee of the whole. The reading clerk will read the next bill, House Bill 17.
House Bill 17, sponsored by Education, Career Technical Education Equipment Grants Amendments. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 17, Career Technical Education Equipment Grants Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Andrew, Bratton, Erickson, Gugamas, Kelly, Lawley, Singh, Strzok, Williams. Representative Andrew, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 17 do pass, and I turn the explanation over to Vice Chair Lawley.
Representative Lawley?
In there now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I bring you House Bill number 17, Career and Technical Education Equipment Grants Amendments. This is a joint interim education bill. We worked it through the interim. And let me just begin by saying again, some of the new people that may not be familiar with career and technical education, commonly referred to by its acronym CTE. But it is a very important program to so many students around Wyoming, to parents around Wyoming, and indeed, I would argue to the entire state of Wyoming. I recently heard a statistic that of all the job openings currently in Wyoming, 60% are CTE-type jobs. That's how important this is. So back in 2023, my very first session, I was part of advocating for a bill that did become law that created a special grant for CTE equipment in particular. You can imagine sometimes the type of equipment they have for CTE programs can be very costly. But have you ever considered the fact that it takes the same amount of money to set up a CTE program for a small school as it does for a big school? The type of equipment needed you've got to have the supplies. To stand up a program, you need to have those things. And the goal is to keep that equipment as up to date as possible because we want students to walk right into a job place and be working with equipment that they were trained on. So CTE programs become very expensive, but particularly for smaller districts. And this grant program was designed mostly to help smaller districts. Other districts can apply, but they get their money for CTE programs through the block grant based on the average daily membership, so the number of students that school has. That's the way the formula works. So smaller districts get very small amounts of money in the block grant for CTE. So we're trying to make up with the grant program. And what we've done here is really simply make a few amendments to the program. And the first amendment that you'll see is on page 1, line 16, where we have increased the amount from $50,000 maximum per grant applications to $75,000 maximum per grant application. We've made another change. We wrote the bill originally with a 5-year, what's called look back, to kind of look at how these schools spent their CTE money the last 5 years. Well, what we've discovered as they began to create the rules and begin to put out the ability for these grants to be applied for is that many schools couldn't look back 5 years and say we used every bit of our CTE money. So that created a little bit of an issue with getting the money out on the grant. So we have changed the 5-year look back to a 2-year look back into districts to see that they can show they've used the CTE money they got in their grant, or it says plan to use, because smaller districts, again, have this problem because of the expenses involved. Sometimes they have to save for 3 years of their CTE money to buy a new piece of equipment. So if they can show that they were saving it for that, then they can meet the requirements of the grant. So there's another small grammatical correction also on page 3, line 1, that just takes out the word further. But that's basically this good little bill, is that we will amend the grant and hopefully be getting money out to smaller districts in particular for CTE programs. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Representative Chestic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for the bringer. Is there a reason that the look back on page 3, line 5 stays at 5 years when it changes to 2 years on page 2, line 20. Is there a difference between those two lookbacks?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is, one is a look back about how money was spent, and the other has to do with applying for other grants. So there are two different things we're looking at. And so we left the 5-year in for looking at what other grants they had received to make sure we're kind of being fair to the smaller districts across the board in applying. The other was a look back about how they actually spent the block grant money for CTE. Thank you for the question.
Representative Lean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just rise in affirmation of this legislation today and encourage the committee to pass it out of committee of a whole. While I know that I come from a larger district for CTE programming, this will create an equal opportunity for those in smaller districts. So please vote in affirmation.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. And thank you for initiating this program. Question I have on page 3. I understand, right, preferences given to the districts that haven't maybe applied or received funding in the current 5 years. My question in terms of, I guess, clarifying, if a school or school district received funds, maybe I received funds 3 years ago, and now it's been 3 years and no one else is applying, even though it hasn't been 5 years, could I still apply?
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that question. The word preference at the beginning of that sentence is very important, and it's basically saying a preference is given, which means if there's no other grant people that are applying for the grants, then there's no need to make a preference on that. So definitely, but that's a great question. Thank you.
Where? Oh, Representative Ottoman. Sorry, Ottoman. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The idea of this, I think, is just wonderful. I worked in a small, Mr. Chairman, I worked in a small district for 17 years and saw that over the years, programs like this had been done away with and how very important they are, not only to the district, but the community and to the state. But what my question is if these grants are permitted, applied for and permitted, the amounts, because a small district then would have to provide the tools, the rooms, the teachers, and all of those things. And how is that to be sustainable? Is that block grant information or, thank you.
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, a good question. There are other things like the block grant that include, they provide for the FTEs. The biggest, we do have an issue with the number of available CTE teachers, and University of Wyoming is doing some amazing things in that area and how to recalibrate their programming and the way they actually even promote for CTE teachers. So there is a CTE teacher shortage in Wyoming right now. But regarding this bill, many times they have the person to teach because a CTE teacher can teach sometimes many classes. I just offer Tinsley, Wyoming as a good example of that. But the issue really is equipment for many of these districts and supplies, and that's also in the block grant currently. The school is applying for these grants to set up a program they have the ability to run at this point. That's what the grants envisions. There are other grants, just so you know, to be kind of give you the universe here that we also passed about the same time. They were kind of what were called demonstration project grants. So they were setting up some brand new type of programs they'd never tried before, but that's a different grant and it has some different qualifications to it. We're not talking about that one today, but I hope that answered your question. Obviously, there's other needs.
Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. This is really going to help the small districts in school districts in my district, and I really appreciate this. My question is there a bottom line of how much each district can apply for, or can one district apply for the whole $75,000?
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, a great question. The program is designed with a maximum amount that any district can get. That's what we're changing, from 50,000 to 75,000. That doesn't mean everyone that applies gets the full amount. It's based on what that need is. So we cap it so we can spread it around to different districts.
Thank you.
Representative Reagan, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there already an appropriation? Is there a limit on the amount of grants? Thank you.
Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is an appropriation. That's another great question. The original appropriation was for $250,000. And the way that it was set up in the original bill in 2023 was that if that appropriation would revert back if it wasn't used, any money that wasn't used. But the intention of the legislature was that it become a part of the budget, a permanent part of the Department of Education's budget. As of today, there's about $31,000 in there, $311,000, excuse me, $311,000 in there. And so we're not asking for increasing of the appropriation. We're just raising up that amount. So some of them need equipment a little more than $50,000. And so we've just expanded the maximum amount on the grant, but we're not in any way increasing the appropriations for the program. But maybe one day I'll ask you to do that.
Representative Heft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand in support of this bill. It gives the opportunity to propel our young people into the future in technical trades and expertise, of which I was a beneficiary of many years ago. Let's pass this bill.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little more information on the funding. When this was first passed in 23, it was in the second half of the biennium. We funded it for that 1 year. It is now part of their standard budget request, so it is part of their standard budget now in the Department of Education.
Yes.
Question? All right, question being called. All those in favor of Chairman Andrews' motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that House Bill 17 do pass. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? House Bill 17 has passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee of the whole rise and report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The motion carries. Let's see, Chairman proceeds to the nearest podium.
John,
I think I need that real quick.
yeah, you can want to run right down there, or you can actually do it down there.
Congratulations, Representative Filer.
Oh, okay. My first time. Okay, there we go. The reading clerk will read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 14 do pass. House Bill 82, do pass. House Bill 156, do pass. House Bill 157, do pass. House Bill 32, do pass amended. House Bill 147, do pass amended. House Bill 17, do pass. Representative Filer, Chairman.
Representative Filer.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Congratulations, Representative Filer. Okay, now moving on, messages from the Senate. No messages. Reports from our standing committees. Any standing committee reports?
House Bill 11, sponsored by Minerals, Manufacturing Sales and Use Tax Exemption Amendments. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred House Bill 11, Manufacturing Sales and Use Tax Exemptions Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Campbell, Lean, Locke, Lucas, Riggins, Storer, Stivar, Wharf. Noes, Representative Brown. Representative Locke, Chairman. House Bill 33, sponsored by Transportation, Vehicle Sales and Use Tax Distribution Highway Fund. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred House Bill 33, Vehicle Sales and Use Tax Distribution Highway Fund, respectfully reports same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Brown, Geringer, Larson, McCann, Nicholas, Posey, Tarver, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman. House Bill 45, sponsored by Representative Byron, removing otters as protected animals. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 45, removing otters as protected animals. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Byron, Campbell, Connolly, Jarvis, Thayer, Wharf. Noes, Representatives Provenza, Storer. Excused, Representative Harshman. Representative Byron, Chairman. House Bill 73, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd. Recreation Safety, Rock Climbing. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 73. Recreation Safety, Rock Climbing. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Byron, Campbell, Connolly, Jarvis, Provenza, Storer, Thayer, Wharf. Excused, Representative Harshman. Representative Byron, Chairman. House Bill 91, sponsored by Agriculture, Eminent Domain Energy Collector Systems Amendments. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 91, Eminent Domain Energy Collector Systems Amendments, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Johnson, Ottman, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. No, Representatives Davis, Eklund, Provenza. Representative Winter, Chairman. House Bill 118, sponsored by Representative Banks, Limitations on Net Land Gains for Federal Government. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred House Bill 118, Limitations on Net Land Gains for the Federal Government, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Banks, Davis, Eklund, Johnson, Ottman, Schmid, Strzok, Winter. Noes, Representative Provenza. Representative Winter, Chairman.
Reports complete. Any re-referrals? Do I want to call him out? Representative Brown, I understand we have a re-referral? Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to re-refer House Bill 33 to your committee number 2 appropriations.
Very good, Representative Chairman Brown, thank you. Okay, are there any other committee announcements? Here are committee announcements this time, please. Representative Ocean Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet Friday, January 17th upon noon recess to hear 3 bills. House Bill 18, Career and Technical Education Funding, House Bill 46, Homeschool Freedom Act, and House Bill 129, School Finance Dates for Fund Transfers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Andrew. Chairman Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet on Friday, January 17th at either 2:30 p.m. or upon adjournment. Basically, we're going to meet after adjournment or after the House, the noon recess committee meetings, whichever is later. And we're going to continue and finish House Bill 169, Homeowner Tax Exemption 2025 and 2026.
Thank you, Chairman Locke. Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 2 will be meeting upon adjournment to complete its work, hopefully, on the state capital construction. Great news, we have completed the majority of our work. We just have a little wrap up on the K through 12 capital construction bill. We'll be bringing that to the body hopefully next week. And we will be, because of the rapidity of our work, we will be changing our tomorrow morning's meeting at 8 a.m. from a House Appropriations Committee meeting to a joint Appropriations Committee meeting to begin our work on the supplemental budget. And therefore, re-referrals will be pushed back to the noon meeting tomorrow. So re-referrals as assigned will be hopefully worked on by the noon committee meeting tomorrow in the appropriations room, 3rd floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Bear. Chairman Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. In E001 to hear 1 bill, House Bill 172, repeal of gun-free zones and preemption amendments.
Chairman Knapp. Thank you, Chairman Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Corporations Committee number 7 will meet Friday, January 17th upon noon recess in Capitol Extension Room E005. We'll hear 4 bills, House Bill 116, Driver's License Unauthorized Alien Restrictions, House Bill 122, Senior Citizen Service Districts Authorization and Renewal, House Bill 79, Bond Elections Voter Threshold Requirements, and God willing and the river don't rise, House Bill 69, Foreign Adversary Ownership and Control of Business Entities if time permits.
Thank you, Chairman Knapp. Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 10, Labor and Health and Social Services, will meet Friday, January 17th at 8 a.m. in room number 3. We will continue House Bill 121, Hospital Pricing Transparency, and then we'll move on to House Bill 76, Prior Authorization Amendments, and then hopefully hear House Bill 96, Prohibiting Mask, Vaccine, and Testing Discrimination. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. Majority Leader Heiner. Chairman Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 9 will meet tomorrow morning at 7:30 to take up 2 bills, House Bill 80, Stop ESG, and House Bill 41, Environmental Quality Irrevocable Letters of Credit. That will be at 7:30 in the Belle Fourche River Basin room. I'm going to get that. And Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, I'll give a list of cow bills for tomorrow.
By all means, I would encourage all of you to write these down so that you will know what you're going to be looking at coming up.
Members, I kind of tricked you yesterday because there was only 2, but we've got more. And The good speaker just read some in, so we have work to do tomorrow. I'll give you a list of those bills. I don't have the order yet, but I'll work on that later. But those bills will be House Bill 11, Manufacturing Sales and Use Tax Exemption, House Bill 91, House Bill 118, House Bill 45, House Bill 73, and no, that's a re-referral, so we can't do that one. So as of right now, we just have those 5. Hopefully, we can get some more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any other committee announcements? I believe that takes care of all that. I have a few announcements here before we wrap this thing up for today. I want to remind you all that the Supreme Court will be having their deal there in the historic Supreme Court room beginning at 4 p.m., and that will be just shortly. And then also to remind everyone that Friday, upon adjournment, we will have a joint Rules Committee with our Senate counterparts to go over the rules and the discussion that we had yesterday and get ready to put together and bring it back to us on Monday. So unless there's any other announcements, I would want to know what maybe my majority floor leader is looking to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm distracted.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adjourn until Friday morning, the 17th at 10 a.m., and that's in 2025.
You've heard the motion of the Majority Floor Leader. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll see you all back here. I encourage you to go to the Supreme Court. That would be a very interesting learning experience for all of us, and also be studying on your bills, getting refreshed with what we're going to be discussing tomorrow. And thank you again, Representative Filer. That for all of us, for a lot of young members, a lot of you got an opportunity to get the butterflies out and learn a lot. You saw a lot of things happen today. It's going to get nothing but easier, I would trust. But thank you all for engaging, and you did a wonderful job. See you tomorrow. Meeting adjourned.